That's why I put it in there. The grounds, they missed out on that fabulous Presbyterian beliefs because I forgot to hit the record button.
But we did study the tree.
We did,
That was a cool diagram.
interesting.
It is a very cool diagram.
That helped
I've looked at
us.
that a couple of times.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. Let's pray. Gracious God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the time that we get to spend around the table together, whether that table is real or virtual. We thank you for the tools that help us stay connected, that technologically that are good, but nowhere near as good as the power of the Holy Spirit that binds us together as a church. We pray that this hour would be pleasing to you. In the name of Christ, we pray. Amen. Well, we have just a handful of Sundays left after this. So 2 more Sundays left after this. Excuse me. Next week, we're going to talk about being a church member. And really, that's kind of our last formal class. Next Sunday is our last formal class of being together, because on the 10th, that is, for those of you who are interested in becoming members, that is the Sunday in which we would receive you as members within the church. And so we would not have a class after the 3rd is the last day, but we would not have a class on the 10th, which means I need to visit with you about what we're going to do in this slot going forward. And I'm going to talk about you today, so we'll come back around to that in a minute. Let's do some welcome and introductions. I'm going to start with the peanut gallery first. John, then Monica, then Kitty. You're going to do your name. And what movie do you think everyone should watch?
John Seaman, coming to you from the United Lounge out at Austin Airport. I'm going to have to leave in about a half hour to go board. And I'm glad you let me go first, Josh, because after this one, nobody else has to tell any movies, because this is the greatest movie ever made, easily. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Monica?
Monica Russell. I guess I would say Shawshank Redemption.
I'm making my laundry list.
And a great book.
Here.
And a great book.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm making my laundry list for October. All right, Kitty.
Kitty Kosachata from Arizona. For a fun movie, Mamma Mia. And then I like Dances with the Wolves.
All right.
Wendy Brown's. I'll just do my favorite movie is Pitch Perfect, because it's just fun and snarky. So.
Greg Brown's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, yeah.
That is such a great movie. You must not.
Natalie Day. The one that came to mind first was, and now I'm not gonna be able to say the name of it. Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
The Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. It was in there, I couldn't make it come out. Yes, The Wizard of Oz, just because of so many different reasons.
Lori Ross, and I loved some from the time I was young, Jaws.
Jaws?
I love those movies, and I just think that it terrified me as a child. To this day, I'm still afraid of it.
And that is one movie you think that everyone should see because it terrifies you?
Not because it terrifies me, but just because it's such a great movie. It's a monster.
Okay. Josh Robinson And a movie that I think that everyone should see is The Count of Monte Cristo. This would be the late 90s, I think, early 2000s. Jim Caviezel stars in the role of the Count, and Guy Pearce is the antagonist. And The Count of Monte Cristo, I would say no short of 30 times have I seen it. And I love it. I absolutely love that film. Julie, we're coming back to you. You're gonna introduce yourself, your name, and what movie do you think everyone should watch?
Name, rank, and serial number. Okay, let's see. What movie do you watch? Name, Tommy Julianne McBrayer. What was the next one?
What movie do you think everyone should watch?
I don't know. Recently, I watched the brand new Cinderella on Amazon. That was fun. I'm sorry.
I saw the second half of that.
All right, well, I'm gonna come back to you, Julie. I'm gonna let, because you came in, I'm gonna let you cogitate on that a little bit. Okay, so today, we're gonna go over the 5 verbs, what I like to call the 5 verbs. And these are the 5 verbs of our mission statement. Our mission statement: invite all to worship God, grow in faith, and follow Jesus by serving others. The 5 verbs: invite, worship, grow, follow, serve. And we're going to talk about them in a way, and unpacking them in a way that is reflective of how we're structured as a local congregation and where we put our focus. But I also want to invite you to think about ways in which maybe you have noticed that our congregation engages the 5 verbs, even if it isn't as formally structured as I've listed here. Or something, which of those verbs, I want you to think about which of those verbs feel more familiar to you, or more like a hand in glove fit for you. So the first verb, invite. And when we think about invite, this verb would probably be a little bit more, and I mean this in the definitive term and not the co-opted religious term, but it is an evangelistic term, not evangelical term, but it is an evangelistic term. This is an idea that we are to take the gift that we have received, which is the gift of the good news of Jesus Christ, and then go out as Christ commands in Matthew 28, and to share that gift with others, to invite them to be baptized, to invite them to live within the community of Christ. And that is the idea of evangelism, or the evangelistic idea of what we are called to do, to invite others, is important. It should be a big motivator about who we are and what we are for. Now, within the Western world, specifically the American Western world, that term has been co-opted and becoming kind of a big negative word, right? That we use to describe a certain school of theology or religious belief known as evangelical, which is quite conservative and tends to trend more towards the fundamentalist perspective than the idea that the more doctrinal idea of what evangelism is all about. I will have been here 8 years next Sunday, so I'm 1 week shy. And when I arrived, the word evangelism was not within the vocabulary of this community. We did not have an evangelism committee. We did not have evangelistic movement, intentional and evangelistic movements where we were inviting. We had this word, invite all, but we weren't living into it in a way that, in such a way that we are now, where we are much more purposeful and intentional about inviting others in. I wrote this paragraph in a sermon many moons ago. And what I'd like for us to do, and I'm going to pick on the ones who are here in the room, but if you have the handout, you can just read along with us. I'd like for us to go around in a circle and take one sentence at a time as we read it out loud. And I wrote this hoping that this would capture the essence of who we are and what and how we might come to understand that first verb, to invite. And I'll start, and then Wendy, I'll come your direction. We welcome your curiosity.
We welcome your need for care.
We welcome your desire to serve.
We welcome your hunger.
We welcome your compassion.
We welcome your thirst for love.
We welcome your eccentricities.
We welcome your tradition.
We welcome your love of beautiful music.
We welcome your love of simple, quiet spaces.
We welcome your ignorance.
We welcome your intellect.
We welcome your brokenness.
We welcome your search for God.
We welcome your bow ties.
We welcome your tattoos.
We welcome your doubts.
We welcome your fears.
We welcome your children.
We welcome your parents.
We welcome your family.
We welcome your illnesses.
We welcome your tears.
We welcome your joys.
We welcome your diversity.
We welcome your experience.
We welcome your gifts.
We welcome your need to be heard.
We welcome your longing to be found.
So welcome, I mean, we could in that paragraph exchange the word welcome with invite, and that could be appropriate, because what I hope, and as Natalie has been with us for a while, this is what I hope that we live into. You know, when I was interviewing for this position many moons ago, I come from a more formal tradition, churchy tradition of coats and ties, and it's awkward if you're not wearing a tie on Sunday or a suit and dress shoes. And I, at the end of my second video interview, virtual interview, Rita Lloyd, who was the chair of my PNC, the pastor nominating committee, said to me, she said, I just got one more question for you, Josh. She said, you know, you're very dressed up and you're very formal with your suit and your tie. And she goes, you know, this is Austin, right? How do you feel about shorts, sandals, and Bahama shirts? And I said, I love them. And I stood up, and she could see I was wearing shorts from the waist down. So I was cool on Zoom long before Zoom was cool. But what I really appreciate about what she had to say is that this isn't one of those places where we say, come as you are, and without really meaning it. And I have appreciated that from the first time I ever set foot in worship here, that I have experienced the come as you are nature. And truly, even today, people come as they are. Some choose to wear suits. I saw Bob a month ago wearing a suit, and I was like, good for him, Bob.
He is not comfortable in church without a suit.
This is Natalie's spouse. Yeah.
He grew up in New York and at the military academy, and he, you know, so he just has certain standards that he holds himself to. Does he care that you're not wearing a suit? No. He
Yeah.
doesn't care, but he wants to wear a suit.
So I appreciate that. I do. And I appreciate that in our Christian education settings, most of what I have experienced here, it is not I have all the knowledge and I am the master in the universe that I am imparting upon you. But from what I've experienced is the invitation is bring, not just come as you are, as in like how you're dressed, but come as you are at whatever stage or phase of life or theology that you may be in, and you're welcome here. And I have grown to really appreciate that. And it grieves me when there are folks who have an experience that where they don't feel that way. So it was about John, was it about 4 years ago? Natalie, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when we established the evangelism committee. And I put there, I'm not going to read all of these paragraphs, but just sort of the essence of what the evangelism committee has been about. And for the most part, for those first few years, it was trying to get our bearings underneath, our ground underneath us about how do we let people know that we exist. You know, we're a tenth of a block, we're behind the strip center. You don't see it driving down Anderson Mill. People who pass us all the time in the neighborhood, they see us, they don't know that we're a church. I get that often. And so the idea was, how do we begin not only sharing who we are and that we exist, but also that there's a place for you here. And we're still working on that. But a year and a half ago, we were asked a question by a member of our community. This person has a child who is in the LGBT community, and his child does not worship with us and has left the faith altogether because of what the child perceived as a hypocrisy or a shunning or an exiling. And the member of our community simply asked the question, when we say invite all, what do we mean by all, specifically related to the LGBT community? And it is what propelled our session to spend some intentional time trying to, how do we answer that related to membership, leadership, and marriage? There are a number of churches within Texas and within our area that would say, we welcome you to come worship with us, but we don't welcome you for membership. We welcome you to come worship with us, and you may be a member, but you cannot ever be a leader, or ever we would ever sanction marriage. And so part of this was a long process for us to, how do we faithfully and appropriately begin to answer that question, which leads us to the statement that I put in the handout here. We at Hope Presbyterian Church consider our PCUSA denomination's overtures related to the LGBTQIA. I don't know what the +1 means. I think that's a typo. LGBTQIA, oh, I know what that means. The one was a footnote from what I copied it from. LGBTQIA plus community as a starting point to engage with and embrace the LGBTQIA plus community within the greater Austin area. At Hope Presbyterian Church, we strive to build upon those general overtures and pursuing the following goals within our church in relation to engagement with the LGBTQIA plus community. And so when we're talking about invite, that the idea is not we invite those who will fit our mold, the way in which we think that we're glad to have you, now you need to look more like us. That it is my hope as your pastor and as this community, I feel that this is a community that we welcome you, we invite you to come as you are. And while we all strive to live a more Christ-centered life and discipleship, our hope is that we do that uniquely as God has made you. However it is that God has made you, however it is that God has shaped you, in whatever way that God is calling you to live out that engagement, the way in which God is specialized within your own life. And I believe that. So that is invite. That's the idea with invite. And we've spent the last many years really trying to do some more intentional work living into the idea of invite and invite all. Worship. The idea of worship, one of the things I absolutely love, I'm realizing I'm going to pause for a minute. I know this seems rude, but I told my son that I would let my wife know Phoenix is ready for pickup. And I'm afraid he may be sitting in the circle drive. So one of the things I love that we put in this opening line, invite all to worship God, is the very word after worship. That word is God. That the concentration of our verb worship is God and not each other, or not about how great my hair looks, or our focus when we are in worship is to be concentrated on God, chief above all things. And if our worship experience is one where that is not understood, then we've done something wrong. And therefore, we have commissioned a group of people to help oversee that, which is our Worship and Music Commission, and to ensure that the focus stays on God. Now, about 20 years ago, this community of people, as we were discerning and trying to figure out who are we, what we are about, and how do we live that, how do we live out our life, this community said about 20-something years ago, we want to invest our focus and our missional focus and ramp up our worship of God through music. So that was the time that we hired Nick and Julie Bolts. Nick is our director of music. Julie is our assistant director of music. And thus began a 20-year movement to being the music program that we have grown to be as of March 2020, right? And even more so still today, but in very different ways. And so what many folks have said my first 5 years here about what they loved about Hope and why they loved Hope is the music program. 80% of the people that you queried would say, oh man, I came here and the music just reeled me in. And that's a reflection of the investment, that the missional investment that this community has made in the music ministry, being a part of who we are and why that is such a big program. And in many ways, there aren't very many programs like it. One of the things that's unique with our music program is we do not hire section leaders for our choir, and many choirs using choral music will hire a bass, baritone, bass, right? To lead that section for others to follow, and we'll pay them for that. And that is not something we have done or traditionally do here, because of how much blooming talent exists within the pews of this place, and how much folks want to be a part of offering it as truly worship leaders, and not just people who get paid to come and lead others in worship. Now, we do have other times where we do have special musicians that come in. One of the crowning parts of our year is our Festival of Carols, which happens in December. And this year we are anticipating not only returning to it, but returning to our Festival of Carols in its fullness. We'll see if COVID will allow us, but also all the way throughout the year with our Holy Week worship services. We have an even song in November, and a variety of other things that we do musically, which again helps those who come to worship be led in worship to the glory of God. And one thing that I truly praise Nick and Julie Bolts for is they are not folks who want the spotlight on them. Their theological purpose as worship leaders is to be for the focus of God. It is to be pointing to God and not to themselves. And I have been in other worship environments where that's not necessarily the case. And maybe I'm not a musician myself, but that's not hard for musicians to do, which is to be acknowledged for the talent that I have and the gift that I have, and expect to be praised for that. I'm not saying all musicians, but that's certainly something that happens within the musicians. So there you have it, worship and music for the glory of God, all focus, not about us, but it's about God. Grow in faith. We acknowledge that one never achieves completion in the process of growing as a Christian. There's always more for us to learn. I was in Bible study this morning, listening to our discussion on the book of Revelation, and what a delight it was to also learn new information from what was being shared amongst the group. And how fabulous is that we acknowledge that we never have arrived, that there's always more. And therefore, it's a value amongst Hope Presbyterian Church to provide opportunities for us to keep growing, both formally within a Christian education setting, but also starting early with our Hope Children's Center, which is our preschool that we have here at the church, as the beginning gateways, stepping stones to that next phase. And that our growing opportunities, the opportunities for growth within our community, are not limited to just Sunday school, what we would traditionally call Sunday school or Bible study, but that, I fully believe that, and I wish we would count it as such, that we do have a large community that engages in our Christian education offerings, but I also believe that one of the other more fundamental ways in which we grow in our faith are the musicians who are in choir every week, that they're not just getting together to hymn and haw and have a good old, boondoggle, that they are engaging in the music that is being assigned, and that they're listening to the words, they're enriching the words, they're bringing these words to life, which is expanding their faith as well. And I feel the same way with our youth choir and our children's choir. It's not about there is happiness and hand-holding and joyfulness, but it is truly Christian enrichment going through what we offer in our music ministry, as well as our Sunday school and our more traditional Bible studies and experiences in that mindset. Does it make sense? Yeah.
So before March 2020, before the earth stood still, what did the Sunday morning Christian education look like here? And what do you think it will be again, so we can get back to something normal?
Well, the summer of 2019, we started a new schedule for Sunday morning. And that was one combined worship service at 10. We've had this Bible study at 8:30 on Sunday mornings for, I don't know, at least 3 years, maybe 4 years. We've done this. What's that? Yeah, we started at 8:30 Bible study. So that's a fixed, verse by verse Bible study. But in the summer of 2019, we had a combined worship service at 10 o'clock, just one worship. And we moved our Christian education to the 11 o'clock hour, this hour. And at the time, and for many moons afterwards, and actually we saw an increase in our Christian education attendance because people would come for worship and stay for Christian education. Unlike the reverse, many would not come for Christian education, they would just come for worship. But we also found challenging for the members of the choir who, if they wanted to participate in Christian education, would always have to leave before the end of the class to go get ready for worship. So we found that our Sunday morning schedule in that regard has been very successful. And I'm not exactly sure what it will look like going forward. I really don't know. I think, our children and youth education opportunity programs have gone through seasons of discernment because of the pandemic. And I think it will take a new life of its own, but may not be the traditional Sunday school model. I think in many Christian settings across the United States, especially, the traditional Sunday school model is going through a time period of reformation. So traditionally, you would join a particular named class. There would be a roster. You would pitch in, buy donuts, have coffee. You have a kind of a small group experience, etc. We move towards topical Sunday school classes more than the St. Andrew's class. But for our children, youth, and their families, I think what we have discerned is Sundays are are okay. But there are other times in the week that are probably more accessible for children, youth, and their families. And so I think the last couple of years, we've been really trying to reflect on that. And I think churches across the United States are also reflecting on that as well, and what that will look like. And so when I say we have one more Sunday left for our class, we will be having an offering in the same slot as doing something going forward. And you're welcome to recommend something of what you might like, because we're taking your feedback.
Well, just as a comment, so that all sounds perfectly what I would expect, but so I mean, I've been in church since I was 4, and we've been going to church together since '86, '85. The thing that's interesting as an adult, more than as a child, where you're just kind of forced into a slot, but as an adult, it's always without fail been a source of community, and you really start feeling more a part of the community when you build those relationships in that kind of a setting. And the fact that it might change is fine, but it kind of gives you some ground, something to hang on to. So I'm hopeful that will be a way we can really enjoy plugging in.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I will say that the 8:30 Sunday morning certainly has that. The Wednesday morning Bible study has that same sort of feel as well. What's that?
5 years when I retired.
Oh, yeah. Well, but also during the pandemic, we started, I think it was just only during the pandemic, we started a Thursday night class, which would be like the last night of the week I would ever choose, the third to next last week at night of the week I would ever choose, next to Friday and Saturday, and yet Thursday night has been a real win. There are many folks who feel really good about Thursday night, and we're having around 14 to 17 folks every Thursday night this fall. And I'd say half of them have been in that Thursday night groove for a couple of years now. And I would never pick it. Thursday is like your Friday. It's like, I get to sleep in on Friday morning because my Friday mornings are your Saturday mornings. And so I would never pick Thursday night. But man, you go where the people are. And I have grown to really, really love that time slot as a great conclusion for my week. And it's a fun time, So I think the community aspect that you're talking about and building, I think as we lean more into this 11 o'clock hour, especially as we get the hybrid stuff more going, more than we've been, I think it too will also build that. And especially when we have folks who will also continue joining us in a hybrid format from afar, that you don't feel, I hope that we would hope is that you don't feel disconnected, that you yourselves are also not only feeling connected with the material, but if you're going to a class like Thursday night, which is exclusively virtual, that sense of community virtually gets equalized, that we're all connected together no matter where we may be. And also giving access to folks like Hillary last week, who was in New Jersey, and John, who's in Guatemala, and that we can click in wherever we are. The other thing I add about the opportunities of the technology, Paulette and Fred Widmer were driving home from a multi-week vacation this week, and they pulled up the worship from last week, and they listened to the worship as they were driving down the road. So again, another way in which to stay connected, or the technology allows those to stay connected. When they show up today, they didn't feel like they missed, something that everyone's talking last week that everyone's talking about this week. And I hope that, again, also having these not only recorded but posted on YouTube, that they're accessible, that you can go back and you can begin to stay connected. was late getting the recording posted from last Thursday, and I've heard about it all weekend long. I didn't hit the record button a few weeks ago, and I heard about it,
It's
you
a
know.
never record problem.
That's why I put it in the bulletin. I have a too many things swirling in my mind problem. Let's go on to follow. And that's one that I think is another one that we haven't been very, like invite. Follow isn't one that we've been incredibly intentional about really elevating. And I put the two groups here, the personnel and stewardship. And I debated about buildings and grounds, but I would have left that with kind of the stewardship aspect of this all. That part of how we follow Jesus. And I think follow is the practice, right? It's the practice of how we model Jesus in our lives. And we should be, the way in which we follow Jesus is practicing the teachings of Jesus through all of our personnel experiences, that our policies, how we engage each other, how we make decisions should be following the teachings of Christ. Stewardship also, and that how we implement the teachings of Christ, how we follow those should also be through how we engage our finances and how we make financial decisions, and how we are stewards of the gifts that this community has pulled together, both the financial gifts, but also the property gifts, the crayons that we keep in the classroom, the Bibles that we choose, that we're making sound, good decisions about the gifts that are given to us, and grieving when we either make a bad decision or can't make the one that we really feel is most that we should make. So that also tends to mean that we take a long time to decide things or to enact things, because we are trying to be as faithful as possible. Session, the idea of the council of our church, might also fit here as well within follow. How do we best demonstrate and lead the teachings of Christ as we follow those in our leadership of others? So I think that's one that I think may need some more attention in the years to come. Exactly what does that mean for everyone within our community, not just the leadership, to follow Jesus in a visible, manifested life. I talked last week about the concept of being a teaching elder, that I'm a teaching elder or a minister of word and sacrament, and that our denomination was using this terminology, teaching elder, and that what that should mean is that was that last week I talked about that, or was that 2 weeks ago? I don't remember. Was it last week? Great. So that all aspects of my life as a leader and a model for the community should be in following in pursuit of the teachings of Christ. But that's not left to me alone. That really should be all of us, and how we grow or how we strengthen that aspect. It's not just about learning, right? But how do we actually deploy that? How do we actually begin to really put meat on the bones and show a life to the world what it means to follow Jesus? What's that?
Bear fruit.
To go forth and bear fruit, yeah. And then finally, the fifth verb is to serve. And within serve, I put the deacons and our service committee. And these are the things, both with our deacons and our diaconate, is compassion care ministries, right? How do we care and love for each other when one is mournful, we all mourn along. When one is joyful, we all joyfully join in praise and joy along with each other. And so our deacon ministry, our Stephen ministry, these are our compassion care outreaches for how we serve others. Same with the service committee. And last Sunday, you were given a lovely, nifty booklet. Last Sunday in worship was our outreach. Now, we have a commission that's called outreach, and two branches under that is evangelism and service. That's all under outreach. And so that's why they're split up here on the handout. But last week was our service focused worship service. And we have this booklet that defines the 22 service agencies that we support, either with our finances or with our boots on the ground. And also an invitation to plug in. It's an opportunity to serve. And so that handy dandy little booklet is a wonderful production of those leaders who help us to engage and to really provide channels for serving others. And we would hope that not only is that grounded in a vision, a Matthew 25 vision, which we've talked about before, but that it really opens the channels up for I can plug in here. It doesn't have to be that we all have to be excited about Hill Country Community Ministries. A lot of us are, but some of us are really excited about the Prayer Shawl Ministry, or some of us are really excited about Puentos de Cristos down in McAllen. And that's okay. There's many channels in which we are provided to serve others. But it also isn't an exhaustive laundry list of all things. So we certainly have folks who are heavily engaged in mission service opportunities that our church does not list, that they do in their own life. And great, because part of the way we follow and we deploy that is showing how we serve others. Does that make sense? Okay, so there are the 5 verbs: invite, worship, grow, follow, serve. And I'm curious for y'all what some of your feedback has been as far as for which of those verbs I've tried to give you kind of an overview, but which of those verbs either you feel more connected to, or which of those verbs you feel describes hope. There's no right or wrong answers here. Describes your experience of hope, or which one do you feel that you feel more connected with? And that's for the peanut gallery as well as for us in person.
All right, I'll break the ice.
Okay, go for it.
Surprise. From the first meeting that we had with you, we had coffee, Panera, you immediately started inviting us to things. You told us about things. You connected us with people, particularly Nick and Julie and others, and they have, you should be very happy, they have invited, and that has caused other people to invite. So I've seen nothing but inviting and welcoming the entire time. It's wonderful because you do want to be part of the community. So I think that is, at least in my experience, that is working. That's great. The things that are a draw are the worship style, the music, the fact that there is a choir, and those kinds of things are important to us. And obviously we've plugged in and we're enjoying that and worshiping through that. And then the other thing is the service. And so I'm seeing a lot of opportunities, both for projects around here and stuff like the booth and stuff, but also through Men of Hope. And there are a lot of things that kind of tick my boxes of places where I feel comfortable to engage, and I feel like I have something to bring. So I think a lot of these verbs are very, very active.
Good.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
For me, I would say first, of course, is invite. Then you really live what you say. And that's been so impressive to me. I've never seen that anywhere before. But I have to say grow, because I have so many more questions now, and I look forward to it every week. It's been really incredible. And I just have to say, again, thank you for all of the work that you and everyone puts into the handouts and the classes and answering questions and being available. It's been amazing.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you. How about you guys? Julie, Monica, Kitty? Any comments on any of the verbs? Go for it, Kitty.
I think for me, being long distance, the invite is especially crucial for me. That you all have invited me to participate virtually. And it's been very rewarding.
Yeah, well, thank you. And not just because you're mama, but I have some insider information on you. But you know, I've been thinking, as I did with Greg and Wendy and Hillary, as I did with Julie, you know, and Monica. Monica jumped into the deep end with both feet. But you know, what I've thought in knowing y'all is, you know, where I might think that you would plug in or things that you might be interested in. And, you know, I've thought about that for you too as well, Kitty, in that, you know, how to be engaged and connected with the community, even if you aren't geographically. And I was having a conversation with some of the deacons earlier this week about ways in which, like, we have an opportunity soon, we'll be doing a call night. And what are those ways in which we have community via technology, that it doesn't matter where you live. And so I think there are ways that you can stay plugged in and be plugged in that regard as well. Julie, how about you? You still with us?
I'm here.
How about you? You've been with us a little while.
I was sitting here thinking about what you all were saying. What I detected from Hope is hard to put into words, but there's a special heart that Hope has that I sensed when I first came. It was a sense of purpose and a desire to do the things that I have not run into any church to really do. I guess y'all are kind of defining them, but to me it was a tangible, palpable pulse that I really thought, these people are sincere.
Mm.
And that is what drew me. And I hope that in time I can add to that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's my hope as well, but not just for you, that if you've sensed some authenticity, if you've sensed some true desire for diversity and invitation, that my hope is that all the members of our community are engaging in that the idea, the concept of inviting all to worship God is not left to the professionals. That this is not a one-man show, right? And I know I've said this to Julie, and I'm not sure if I've said this to others or not, but I know I've said it for Julie, is when you come to worship and you enjoy the worship, or you feel like you're able to connect with God through the worship that we offer, and maybe that you like what I have to say in a sermon, that's great. But the only way that this is going to have any meaning for you in your life is how much you invest outside of worship. So getting plugged in, getting connected, the way in which this sustains is, I'm a temporary employee in that sense. I'm not going to be here forever. Many of you will, right? And most of the church here has been here longer than I have. And you know, I have this short time now. Let me be very clear, I ain't going anywhere. I have no desire to go anywhere. I'm dialed in. But for the longevity of the members of the church, their tenure here will long outlive mine. And the way in which that gets sustained is, you know, I try to encourage folks, do not join the church because of the pastor. Join the church because you feel that you can get dialed in, that you feel like you have something to offer this community that has been forged together for a good cause See, segue back to the sermon today. For a good cause. I hope that I can be a good leader for y'all, and I hope that I can help you find your thing of where you can get dialed in. But then again, it really is about the members of the church engaging and giving of their time and their finances to see that what we're doing here not only matters, but also thrives. Does that make sense? So I want to certainly, I know Julie and I have had a number of talks about that, and Julie's been here a little more than 2 years. I want to say maybe May of 2019, Julie.
Yes.
Is that about right? And Julie's on, 2 years here, is now on Buildings and Grounds Committee. She's a receptionist, volunteer receptionist, not only in the church office, but also in the preschool office, and has engaged in the life of the church in a variety of other ways, and an avid, ongoing participant in our Christian education. So I think that, I think that was, again, Julie's idea of, it's kind of like double Dutch. Sit, hang on for a moment, see what the life is like, see what the rhythm of the ropes are, and then jump in and go and find where that best serves you. The grounds, I mean, it wasn't 2 weeks before you were in the choir, right? So it's a matter of like that. I like to think of like double Dutch, finding the rhythm and where do I jump in? And I want to encourage you all to think about that. One unagendaed item that I would like to attend to before we have our closing prayer, and that is, since we have Natalie, our elder for Christian education, available to us, what piques your interest? So I'm doing a theological doctrines class on Thursday night. I'm not about to start another theological doctrines class, that is for sure. I have enjoyed this and talking a little bit more about what this is all about, this church business is all about, especially locally here. What piques your interest? What might you be interested in if there was another class to be offered, and there will be? What is it that you think would say, hey, I think I really want to do that? What do you think? Could be anything. Throw it out there. Brainstorming.
I think some of the most challenging and enjoyable times over the years have been maybe some book studies that have been difficult books. So I'll throw one out. Is it Tony Campolo's 20 Hot Potatoes Christians Are Afraid to Handle kind of thing? I've done that one. I've actually taught that one. I'm not
Good.
offering to teach.
Sorry. I tried, Natalie.
But something like that, because it's not, I'm not going to minimize Bible study. Okay, I'm not minimizing Bible study, and I know you can always keep learning, but after 60 years, it's like sometimes you need to mix it up a little bit, right? So taking that and applying it to your life in a more concrete way, and talking through the issues, especially talking through those issues in the context of the time in which you live, I think is useful. So it kind of brings the scripture teaching to life in a practical way, right? So I think those kinds of things, I've seen groups of people get really engaged in that and grow out of that, have some interesting discussions out of that. Maybe not everybody will agree, right? But anyway, that's kind of good.
Okay, a book study.
Yeah.
And Tony Campolo, have you ever met him? Have you ever been in his presence?
Yeah.
I had him as a special speaker at my church in Virginia, and man, he's a firebrand. I love that guy, and any of Tony Campolo's books would be fascinating book studies.
He came to First Baptist for something several years ago, and after the service, I walked up to him and said, I just had to tell you, you make me really, really mad when I read this book, and I learned a lot, and thank you. It's because he didn't really know how to take me when I first heard, but I wanted to get his attention, because he got my attention with the book.
Good. I'm good. I got it. I wrote it down.
Well, I thought you were still writing with the crayon.
I am. You know what I decided to do is I had something that I wanted to show you on the board. And I think it's important connecting a little bit about what you're saying. What I hope is is my model that I keep in my head about how I organize Christian education. And it's A, B, C, and there's row. Oh, what horrible markers. Come on. You go with what you get, and you don't throw a fit. I don't know if you can read that or not. All right, so 3 rows, A, B, and C, but 4 columns. Here, and go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. I don't have a better one. All right, this is going to be, you're just going to have to imagine this with me, you in the gallery. 3 rows, A, B, and C, and 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You end up with a grid of 12 boxes, right? Okay, so here's how I think, when I categorize Christian education opportunities in my head, here's how I go through it. A is study of the Bible. Anything that is more of a traditional Bible study, A is all about Bible. All about Bible. B are things related to theology. Okay, and C is praxis, Praxis. It is about how we take A and B and put it into, and we deploy it in life, right? Which is the praxis of our faith. Bible, theology, praxis. Now, in the columns across the 4 columns, I'm going to go in reverse. Number 4 is leadership. Number 3 is called biblical. Number 2 is called cultural. And number 1 is disengaged. And these are definitions or adjectives describing different types of Christians. There are Christian leaders, which is that area 4, that column 4. There are biblical Christians, which is this column 3. There are cultural Christians, which is this column 2. And cultural Christianity are those that, you know, they would identify as Christian. They'll show up for Christmas Eve and Easter, but otherwise they're not really all that engaged. A biblical Christian attends worship at least maybe twice a month, and they more than likely, at a minimum, will be doing a Sunday school, daily devotional, or devotionals every day, go to worship every Sunday. That's a big category. And only about 10% of a community is in that leadership Christian module. And the type of Christian education that they're thirsting for or thriving for is to help lead 1, 2, and 3. 1, the disengaged is those who never go to worship. These may be people who believe that God exists, but are completely disengaged from the practice of faith. So what I found in a rubric like this is there are some churches that will hone almost exclusively in A3, Bible studies for the biblical Christians. There are some churches that are really, really, really good at A1 and 2, right? Because that is an evangelism, it's a gateway in. The class that we've been doing the last few weeks here, I would probably put in the C category and in a 1 and 2, somewhere in that range. So hopefully this has been accessible for someone who's disengaged, who's maybe asking a few questions, or 2, I'm getting back into the flow of this thing. I've been kind of MIA. I'm trying to get back into the flow of this thing. Not a lot of Bible, not a lot of theology. The class I'm doing Thursday night, I would put on the right side of B3, right? The theological doctrines. I hope that it's accessible and understandable for those who are in the two. But honestly, if I'm doing an audit, what we're putting together is definitely in that B3. Y'all jiving with me here? Now, a lot of classes, I know about 8 years ago, we have offered a lot of classes here. This seems to be the sweet spot, which is the C2 and C3. A lot of praxis classes, right? For those who might be coming on the on-ramp, or those of how do we're already on the interstate, how do we, be more fuel efficient? I love analogies. And then we have a lot of A, but we have not had a lot of B. If you look at and do an audit of the last 10 years of classes we've offered, there's not a whole lot of theology style classes. A lot of C as a predominant, and then A, the Bible, as kind of as a secondary to that. That doesn't mean that we have a low value of the Bible by any means. Just means that that's, I think more folks are not necessarily after 60 years of Bible study want to have more of C. How do we actually do this thing? But I think most folks, when we offer a lot of C, the kind of practice of daily living, it is we're in society groping for how do we make sense of the world. And my argument is that C, all of these classes in C have to be grounded on A and B, which is why, we have the 8:30 Bible study as stated, Wednesday morning Bible study as stated. We will continue having times, maybe the 11 o'clock hour, we'll have some more Bible stuff. But also how important it is for us to engage in the theology of the doctrines, the confessions. I did a worship class a few years ago, which was more of the theological approach to worship than the praxis of worship. So, an idea like a book study, it depends on the book where that could fall, right? Is there an easy on-ramp for folks? Or is it more geared for folks who are further advanced or along, not advanced, but further along in their Christian identity and wanting to grow? And that's where I would try to find some balance. So that's a lovely aside. Book study is one of those. What else might be of interest to y'all that you might want to study or learn about?
Well, I really would advance in my class. The theology. I mean, learning about hope and meeting everyone has been so wonderful and incredible for me, but I really, really enjoy the theology study. I think it's really fascinating.
Okay.
I would definitely join more of those Bible studies.
The more of the theology class. Yeah. I'm not sure what else I would do other than what we could do. And I said this at the beginning of that class is I could take any one of those doctrines and do a whole season on any one of those, which because all we're doing now is just kind of surveying of a survey. And that would be a deep dive into that. And so I appreciate that you said more along that B track, that kind of theology track. What about you, Natalie? And Julie and Kitty, I'm going to come ask you guys and Monica in a minute. Natalie?
I have been, because I haven't done a lot of Bible studies. I've been, the classes that I've attended through the years have been other kinds of things. And so
More of the C level?
Yeah, more of the C level, and the B level, when it was offered. But the theology is very interesting to me. And I've got to get hooked into that Thursday class. There were a couple of them that I couldn't do, and I just haven't then gone and joined. But I really would also be fascinated by
Last week's was incredible. I was so upset because I couldn't stay the whole time. But it was really good.
Yeah. She was asking me, what are those? Like, oh, this is bad. I was talking to her yesterday. Anyway, so that's where, but I have to say, digging into the Bible class with these folks that are really into all of the reference materials and all of that kind of stuff has been I'm hooked. I'm kind of hooked on.
Yeah, like that
It's
8:30
really
Bible study.
fascinating. Yeah, that's been a great group, and the Bible study that was the Thursday, in that Thursday night slot. The same, kind of the same, just really dig in and think about what it's really saying, kind of word by word, it's literally word by word, as you see, sometimes we talk about.
Yeah, this morning we were looking at the word you, Y-O-U, and questioning whether it was singular or plural. It was the word you in one translation, English translation of the Bible, but it was the word them in another translation of the English Bible. So I pulled out the Greek and we were able to see, no, it really means you singular and not them plural. But the difference that it makes on that one verse and the tone. And so.
Right, and it really makes a difference in kind of what it means. Anyway, so those are kind of my two areas. And then just in the past, the class that probably was the most helpful to me in terms of practice was a parenting class, was a class for parents of young children. Yeah, so.
For teenage girls, maybe?
Right, yeah, that's a whole different.
A whole class on teenage girls. I'm writing that down.
You already learned the eye roll. So you're gonna have to-
No, I had that down from a long time ago.
We learned that when we were teenagers.
I mastered that.
Kitty, Monica, Julie, anything that you might suggest or things that you might be interested in?
Since I've been MIA in the church for a while, I'm interested in all of it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Julie?
No, one of the things that interests me is the declining interest in the Christian faith, the cultural causes, and what our response is. I mean, there is, to me, it seems like there's some utility in understanding what the causes are so that we can be more efficient at maybe targeting those when we're trying to invite or be welcoming or things of that nature.
I hear you say that, Julie, and what comes to mind for me is I think there's not an easy answer. I've spent a lot of time the last few years searching for some of those answers. And I mentioned it in a sermon not too long ago. I've spent a lot of time doing study of American history and Texas state history. And I think that some of the ways in which you come to answer that question is through the study of Christianity juxtaposed to American history and the movement, the spread of Christianity through the lens of Texas state history. And I'm wondering, and I thought about this, if damn it, Joel hadn't left me, one of the classes that I was thinking about for this fall was a history class, was teaching American history, the American history, again, paralleled with through the lens of Christianity.
Like a history of the Christian church in America, kind of as.
Well, I don't know which one I want to put.
Parallel?
Yeah. Well, I don't know which one I want to put first, though. There is some parallel, and the primary narrative of American history is American history with religion on the side, and yet I think it is religion, specifically Christian religion, which has propelled a sizable amount of American history. And that's probably the argument that I would make, that and as a result of that, Julie, we have a lot of the challenges and causes that we have today as a result of the Christian faith has been a primary determining factor of how the history of the United States has been unveiled. And I would love to write that class. I don't know if I have the time to write it right now.
Sounds
That's
fascinating.
fascinating.
We may have one. Somebody brought up the other day that I think it was Reed Hobby.
Yeah.
He taught a class like that. in the
Yeah,
past, so he's got one.
Yeah, I have an idea of a book that I want to use that I would write it from.
Yeah,
But then I've also been looking at the power of mythologies and what we culturally have identified as fact or history that are really just culturally accepted mythologies. And an example of that, a book sitting on my desk right now, is a book called Forget the Alamo. And there is the seventh grade, yeah, it's a controversial book. There's the 7th grade history textbook of the story of the Battle of the Alamo, which is a solidified, in my opinion now, I'm going to get crucified for this. Please don't crucify me for this. But in my opinion, what we've written and instituted in concrete in our 7th grade Texas State history textbooks is a mythology that stands in contrast to facts and true history. And my world got rocked 4 years ago, when I learned that and learned, like they said in Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. I just recently learned about the Come and Take It flag in Texas from the Battle of Gonzales. And I have been trying to process that for the last 8 days. And right now I'm only coming to words that are not appropriate to use in public context, or as Phoenix would call them, big daddy words. And so I'm trying to process on. So the idea of Christianity and American exceptionalism, American idealism, the history of the American development, those are all things that I've been harnessing in and focusing on, and wondering what role does the church have in teaching history, and how we might impact that. Because I think the way I would teach that class, I guarantee you, is not how they would teach it in the public schools or in universities. And I'm curious to know what that class would look like.
Yeah, the racial justice that we did. Kind of
Yes.
did a lot of that, and that was fascinating. And that's another aspect that I think, I don't know how many people we can get to attend those classes about things like racial justice and, the LGBTQIA community and how that, what our history as a Christian church is.
Yeah.
But that, it's
Well,
not, it's not fun. So I don't know
Yeah.
how much attendance we would get.
Well, we just had a class, God and the Gay Christian, and one of the things that we said we would do after our focus on invite all, specifically related to the LGBTQIA plus community, is then to pivot to what do we mean by all when it comes to the topic of race. And so that really might be what's appropriately the next step. Julie, thank you for commenting on that. I really appreciate that.
What does Monica have to say?
Yeah, Monica, I'll let you have the final word.
I'm in an interesting spot because I'm new here. So all the Bible classes and all that's great. What I miss the most is social opportunities, which there aren't a lot of in the church or outside the church or whatever. And I'm finding a lot of people when I go out to, Silver Sneakers exercise or whatever, they're saying the same thing, there's no life left. And I think that's something people need, and it's going to be hard for them to go back into it.
Thank you. And one of the things I've been thinking about is you're exactly right. And I've been wondering as of late what it would look like if we had a monthly Sunday afternoon drive, rent a van, and we all go to Community First Village here in town and take a tour there together, or we get in a van and we all go to the Texas State Capitol, and I do a lesson on the grounds of the Texas State Capitol there as kind of it's an outing for sure, but then there's a way in which we're all together and building community in that regard. The only downside is, poor kitty. Sorry, Mom. But you'll be in town at some point, but I think some of those, one-off outings, or to go to the Blanton Art Museum and I give you a primer. We're going to spend 2 hours at the Blanton Art Museum. I'm going to give you something to think about as you walk through, and then we'll come back together on the backside and have some debriefing of the Blanton Art Museum. Those are things that I know I would both, I think, would help with that rebuilding of community, but also, again, would be within the category of continuing to help grow and how we see the world and how we see our faith at work in the world. So.
Yeah, we have a person who regularly attends Christian education who is tight with the Bullock Museum.
Is Diane Rogers. She attends our Thursday night class too.
Yeah.
A trip to the Bullock Museum also, I think, would be impactful. So I'm going to get with Natalie here. We'll talk through a few things about what might be in the hopper that we can start in a couple of weeks, and then we'll be announcing that shortly.
You got some good ideas.
Sounds
for us.
really
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, now I need a volunteer to read our closing prayer.
Oh, I haven't done that.
Oh, thanks, Wendy.
May God, who's our strength, help us celebrate the freedom we have received and remember his great deeds and grow in trust. May Jesus Christ, in whose name we find power, help us to honor his name with everything we do and say. And may the Holy Spirit, who helps us to pray, motivate in us the power of prayer, discovering while praying that there is indeed power in the name of Jesus. Amen.
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 All right, everybody. God's peace be with you. I'm going to hit the stop record button.
Oh, he remembers that.
I remember.